What I love about Anchor is that it's given me creative control of my own material. I was approached by a big company to do a podcast about the art world, and I didn't want to sign over all rights to them. Anchor has allowed me to make this podcast and to keep creative control as well as financial control in terms of advertising. Anchor gives you everything you need in one place for free. You can use it on your phone or your computer. There are tools that help you to upload your recordings that you've done separately or on the app. They'll distribute it for you as well, which again, I couldn't wrap my mind around distribution, and they have it all there for you in one place: Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and many more. You can easily make money from it as well. They help you advertise. As you can see right now, I'm getting my first ad out through Anchor. And all you have to do is download the app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Good luck with your podcast and getting your voice out there and owning your content. Welcome back to another episode of the Bees and Honey podcast. This week we're speaking with Florian Wupperfeld, who is the creator of the LCD Awards, and he's going to tell us a lot about his organization and what it does and how it brings art to the people and brings cultural institutions into collaborations with many other entities to make viewing of art and other cultural experiences more enjoyable for everyone. Okay, so thanks for taking the time to join me today, Florian Wupperfeld. Please tell me a little bit about Leading Culture Destination. What is it? How did it come about as an idea? And what are the LCD Awards?
Well, look, basically it is the logic consequence of my life, really. And I think the epiphany moment was that I was sitting with my back then better half at home planning a trip, and we realized that we're actually only planning our trips to go somewhere based on the cultural offering or the art shows or the exhibitions there. And that kind of, I thought, like, there must be a lot of people like us traveling the world because of arts and culture. And if you search into kind of like the travel world of what is on offer for cultural holidays and that kind of thing, it's still very kind of, it's for a different kind of crowd. It's more kind of follow the umbrella and see, the locals, and it's not kind of that contemporary feel of what we were experiencing. So I really felt that there's a disconnect between the cultural destinations and the offering, and then basically the tourism industry. And that was, almost 10 years ago. We started off then doing art safaris. We organized trips to unique places, to places which usually couldn't be unlocked. We interviewed, to this date, right now, we have about 300 ambassadors interviewed about their favorite cultural hotspots in the world.
Wow.
And so this could be a destination, it could be a specific museum, it could be a private art collection. Very often it's also just a hotel which has a great art collection. It doesn't necessarily have to be kind of a cultural place in the kind of first instance. And so we started this, and then at that point I also worked with the New York Times, and I basically spoke then to them, and I said, guys, I'm doing this project, and would you help me with media and support? And then they basically helped us 2014 to set up the first Leading Culture Destination Awards. It was in partnership with the New York Times and ArtNet back then. Mm-hmm. And basically today we're helping, in the end, we're helping destinations to be discovered. We help cities to become part of the kind of, help them to create an ecosystem for kind of cultural tourism. And the highlight every year is the awards, but we also do salons, academies, and then we also work with kind of destinations on more on the strategic side, and how can you build an ecosystem for a destination so that the culture is kind of really an asset in their kind of tourism offering. And then, we can talk about it in a second, what actually does culture mean. And so in the past, 2-3 years, I think the big highlights were we worked on the campaign for European Capital of Culture in Valletta, in Malta. And so we worked with the Maltese government on bringing Malta into kind of not just, they are a fantastic summer kind of beach holiday tourism destination. But, they had issues in the winter because of the occupancy rate and less people came in. So we thought that maybe culture could help to bring a kind of more ongoing tourism in the winter times. And actually, we increased the occupancy rate in the hotel from 35 to 44% that year. And then the other one, which just happened actually, was the city of Berlin, who came to us and said, like, look, we're not like Venice, where we have over tourism like Venice, but we feel like we need a better tourism, not more tourism. And maybe you can help us that, the entire city gets behind kind of a cultural theme. How can we make sure that the benefits of tourism also reaches everybody in the ecosystem? Because what happens often is that, the big hotel groups, they skim off the profits on the top. So a handful of very famous artists get seen, but the bigger artist community of a local place doesn't. And so it was a little bit like, these little snowballs you have for Christmas. It was a little bit like this, kind of to start shaking it one more time so that all the pieces fly back into the snowball to basically rearrange a little bit the ecosystem with was just shaking it. There was a proper strategy behind it. But so, yeah, now you can see what happened. If you go on youtube.com/LCD Travel, you can see what happened.
Okay, yeah, I did that, and I encourage everyone else to do it as well, to see what happened there earlier this year. So who have been the recipients of these LCD awards? What are the awards given for, in what categories?
So look, the thing is, we are not the Turner Prize or something like this. We always had the visitor experience at the heart of what we're doing. So, it was always about kind of what is the experience for a visitor? And so, our categories, we have 5 main categories. One category is called the Leading Culture Destinations of the Year, where we have Best Exhibition of the Year, Best Architecture of the Year, Best Museum Restaurant of the Year, Best Museum Shop of the Year, and Best Digital Experience of the Year. And here in this category, it's a little bit, especially in exhibition, it's a little bit like, the Super Bowl, so it's a little bit the usual suspect. So this year it was, the Guggenheim for the Hilma af Klint exhibition, which was, I think extraordinary. It's I think the Serpentine Gallery showed it before, and that was an extended version of it. And so this is the first category. And then the second category is kind of new culture destinations of the year. So this is kind of separated into kind of Europe, North America, Latin America, Asia Pacific, Middle East, Africa, and Asia Pacific. And here, look, when we started in 2014, we could hardly find anything in the Middle East and then Africa. And now, with, the Louvre in Abu Dhabi, the Science Foundation in Cape Town, and there's so much stuff happening in Senegal, in Lagos. So, that category, which was kind of really difficult to fill with nominees, is actually now really kind of a thriving category.
Bursting.
Exactly. And then, of course, then our next category is called the Soft Power Destinations of the Year. So we are looking at cultural organizations who have done great work in impacting their local community. Then we have one category which is called Climate Smart. I always criticize a little bit the museums that, they're in the archival business, but they should also educate us around the big challenges of the future. And we're giving a prize to museums to educate us around one of the biggest challenges of our time, which is climate change. And then last category is the Avis Travelers Awards, which we've been working with Avis for, I think, 5 years now, which is best at the cultural festival, the best emerging cultural city, which, by the way, this year was Tbilisi in Georgia, and then the best art hotel of the year, which was Five Arms of Hauser and Wirth in Scotland.
I haven't been there.
Yeah, but that's basically our different categories. And so look who won these categories. It was MoMA won for North America, now it's for the
Mm-hmm.
refurb.
Mm-hmm.
We had, for example, last year the Sites Foundation winning for the kind of for various categories. I mean, Thomas
Mm-hmm.
Heatherwick with his design has done really an incredible job there.
Mm-hmm.
We had the V&A previously as a winner, but also very small organizations. So the Dharavi Design Museum, which is basically a little mini trailer, which is a museum in the slums of Mumbai, which is
Mm-hmm.
basically because there's a lot of craftsmen in Mumbai in the kind of less privileged areas, and what they have done is basically they've taken these cricket bats or whatever they produce and they painted them in a kind of very artistic and new way, and they kind of made a campaign around it, and it went around the world and was really an example again that you don't have to be a massive huge organization. If you
Yes.
have a kind of a small idea and you execute well, you can be seen. And another example, for example, for soft power, so when Donald Trump became president and he announced the travel ban, a small museum in around Boston kind of they
Mm-hmm.
unhung all the artwork from artists from these 7 countries, which were produced by these artists from these countries, or which were donated by people who came from these countries. And so they had to unhung 30% of the exhibition, and they kind of just put a sticker there, which was called Artless. I think they went from 20,000 followers on Instagram to 2 million followers within a week.
Wow.
And so I
Wow.
think here again, it just shows you that if you have a good idea, and if you really engage with kind of contemporary culture in your community, you don't have to have the Guggenheim patrons list to kind of make a change in the world.
Yes, that's good to know. And I'm very often seeing that with the young artists living in uh, out of these areas in the countryside who make a big difference as much as the ones living in the city. So, where do you see LCD going in the future? What are your plans for it?
Well, look, the future, I mean, I think, it's a
Yeah.
funny question in
Yeah.
in a Corona world. Somebody said, so what's your plan? And then the person answered, he's like, you cannot plan the unimaginable. So
Right.
that's where we are right now. But I think, as you know, I've been a trend scout for many years and worked for BMW on their culture strategy and kind of where does
Mm-hmm.
kind of the cultural industry go and stuff like this. So I'm always I like to sniff out what's around the next corner.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think what's I think interesting for me is I think I mean, look, I'm in the kind of somehow culture and tourism world. I think the art world will have a tough time, extremely tough time for several reasons. I think
Right.
museums have not been that well funded in the first place, and now this is a huge problem. So they have to come up with new strategies on how to maybe sustain their kind of programming and education and stuff like this. I think the art world, the art fairs, and the art market will have a problem because I think it has been so over leveraged already before Corona. I think there's a huge clean out gonna come there. I don't really want to kind of, I mean, look at Venice, what's happening to Venice right now. I mean, Venice lives off tourism. So I'm actually, funnily enough, I'm based out of Munich right now because I'm helping my parents. My mom had a stroke about 8 weeks ago. And so I actually ran into a friend who has like about 10 hotels. I mean, I think the entire travel industry has a massive challenge ahead of them. I think Berkshire Capital just sold all their shares in like the American Airlines they have invested in. So I think there's a huge shift going on, and so I think for us, what we're interested in is to bring people together. So like, I think this ecosystem much more it used to be, the museums were in their vertical silo and the travel industry was in their vertical silo and the kind of the real estate developers were in the next vertical silo. I think we all have to come together, and I think we have to kind of think about what are the different opportunities because innovation doesn't happen in these silos. It's usually in the fringes. And so I think one thing which Brian Eno said quite nicely is like, you know, innovation doesn't happen by one person coming up with something. Usually it is a community, and it's kind of different people rubbing on each other. And then out of that comes then the big innovation. And then maybe somebody was the most bossy one who kind of screamed it the loudest or was able to articulate it the best. And that's why we thought it was his or her idea. But usually these innovations come out of communities. And our goal is to bring people from different areas together, because the cultural ecosystem is quite a vast ecosystem. And to bring people together to really build kind of, basically build cultural, social, and also commercial equity for these places. And I think it's really important to bring locals together with globals, and culture with travel, and policy makers with real estate developers. And I think that idea to build platform is the way forward. I mean, if you look at how, you know, the digital companies have innovated over the last 20 years, it's always platform based. You know, they have developers coming in and designers and people with ideas, and then they create MVPs, and then they let it, then they test it. I think, you know, we're coming now to a point where the museum directors, they have to open up a little bit and kind of think about how can they engage with other people who are maybe less educated and less academic as they are. Real estate developers and tourism people have to think about how can they engage with cultural people who might be less commercially driven than they are. But there is value in between them. And that's basically our goal, that we want to continue building these ecosystems in order to kind of create future ready and future proof cultural experience for all of us, because I think it's incredibly important that we preserve our heritage, that we understand our heritage, that we understand where we're going moving forward. And if we are not educated, then that's the biggest problem. And therefore, I think the cultural development and building these ecosystems is our main goal.
Wow. Well, you already answered the question that I was coming to next, which is basically how the cultural institutions could shapeshift to accommodate the developments that are happening right now. But tell me, because we talked about culture a little bit in the beginning, and some people probably have an idea what culture means, but what does it mean to you? What does it mean to LCD in the context of what you're working on?
Well, look, this is always the big question. What is culture? You know, I think I always say culture is the stuff between people which makes us excited, you know? So it is, culture is the food, it's the music, it's the art, is, you know, in Berlin, the culture is to be cornering. You know what cornering is?
To sit on a corner?
To sit on a corner and drink beer, and instead of just saying you're hanging, the Berliners gave it a name, so it looks like you're more busy.
Well, in Trinidad, they call that liming. So yes, we have that in common, the Berliners and the Trinidadians.
So I think this is culture. So, but I think what culture is culture is culture is our future, but it's also our past. And I think this is really important to understand, that, you know, language is culture and all of these things. I think it's important to understand where we come from in order to path the way where we're going. And, you know, I don't think that culture is the stuff you hang on the walls, you know. This is also culture, but this is just a small element of it. And so I think culture has also to do with attitude. And culture is basically, in talking in political terms, and Joseph Nye, former Harvard professor and advisor to the American presidents, he kind of coined the term of soft power. I think, you know, culture is a huge element of soft power. And I think we live in a time now where hard power has kind of ripped us almost apart. And, you know, finance, kind of, you know, nationalism, all of these things kind of, you know, kind of getting kind of more oil and more cars. And, like, you know, I think the hard power of our society has kind of come to a stop to a little degree now because of this corona. We're rethinking it. And, you know, at the same time, governments are thinking of putting back kind of like tracking devices onto us because they want to see kind of who are the spreaders. But I think the soft power element is a big part of what we kind of have to further develop. And I think culture is basically also, to a certain degree, a belief system. And I think, without culture, there is no kind of, it lacks basically the entire vernacular and the air which exists in places and between people. And I think this is really important to to keep nurturing it. Culture comes at a price. There's a famous comedian, Bavarian comedian, who said, art is wonderful, but it's also a lot of work. and culture is the same thing. It's like, to have a strong culture is like to have a six-pack. It kind of, it takes a lot of training and persistence, and it sometimes hurts to get it.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Well, I had another question. I don't know if we have time for it, but it seems sort of irrelevant after we've spoken about all these deep things. And as you said, the paintings on the wall or whatever are just a drop in the bucket of what culture means. So I think I'll leave that question off. But if there's anything else you wanted to add before I sign off, please, add it. It's a pleasure to hear you speak and to hear someone who is working between the fields of art discuss these matters.
I hope that this corona virus moment now, look, it will have a lot of negative impact, I think. But it offers us a chance maybe to rethink certain things, and to come together, really. I think it's time to reach out to each other and to help each other and to listen to each other. And solutions are never being served. Solutions are usually being shaped and developed and discussed. And so I think what's really important is we have to now, this is why this word social distancing, I think, is absolutely wrong. I mean, we have to maybe physically distance ourselves, but I think socially we have to come together. And I think we have to create a culture of social integration and cultural integration in order to overcome this pandemic. And I think museums play a vital role in this process, because museums, as places of education, they're at its core the kind of part of that kind of development and ecosystem. And therefore, I think the museums are we're gonna see very interesting developments there in the next 3-5 years. And I'm not just talking about digital exhibitions. I mean, I just heard at the Academy when we did this in Berlin. Did you know that to send one image on WhatsApp uses as much energy as a 30 watts lamp burning for 3 hours?
No, I didn't know that.
Can you imagine, like, to watch a Netflix film, like, how much energy and how much global warming this kind of takes, and to have all these museums kind of to visit virtually. I don't know if this is maybe the solution. I don't know. All I know is, like, in the end of the day, museums are places of learning and kind of social kind of. They're places where it's about education and kind of coming together. And I think, that's their job. And what the solution for it will be, we don't know yet. But I think they will play a vital role in kind of creating our future.
Right. Well, that's the thing. I was thinking about these virtual viewing rooms for the art fairs right now, and how much energy those must be using up.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know. I mean, I think it is a way to engage with people, but I think, it comes at a cost, and, we have not thought through that cost yet,
Yes. All right. Well, hopefully I'll see you sometime in the summer if things ease up a bit worldwide. Keep doing the great work you're doing, and hopefully
I send you a big kiss to New York City from Munich, Germany.
Mwah! Thank you. Yes, we need all the love we can get here. We've definitely been feeling the noose around our neck.
Keep calm and carry on.
Yes,
Take
culturally.
Care,
bye. Thank you for joining us again on the Bees and Honey podcast. I hope you learned a little bit about leading culture destinations, and hopefully we'll all be participating in these wonderful offerings that we make for each other, and hopefully soon we'll be able to share with each other in person. Stay well, and speak to you soon.